This is AgGrad Live.
We have all of the different segments within the cotton.
The show that explores what it's really like to work in the ag industry.
So making sure that we get policy and regulatory issues
straight from the people who live it every day. All right, we're back, AgGrad Nation. Thanks so much for joining, those of you who can join us live. And special announcement here. You can, if you missed this live and you don't want to watch it on Facebook later, you have two options. You can watch it either on YouTube or you can listen to it in audio format. We just launched the AgGrad Live podcast last week. There's already 6 episodes there. So we have, AgGrad has joined the podcast movement, if you will. And if you want to listen to it on your way to work or while you're working out or whatever the case may be, you can also listen to this via podcast. So very excited to continue this series where we're highlighting different careers in agriculture. If you haven't, make sure you go back and check out some of the previous career spotlights we've had. But what we're going to get to discover a little bit about today is 2 things I'm excited about. Number one is speaking and training is something that has been asked about from the AgGrad community in the past. The second is somebody who early in their career is kind of operating at a high level. In fact, she's the Chief Operating Officer. So I'm going to bring her on. This is Amanda Sollman. She is the Chief Operating Officer of Jewell Speaking and Training. Amanda, you are on the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I definitely think that this will be a really interesting glimpse into a career that maybe a lot of people don't think about when they think about agriculture. But before I get too ahead of myself here, could you just start off by telling us what is Jewell Speaking and Training?
Yeah, so Jewell Speaking and Training is a consultant business we provide a variety of professional and personal development services. So that primarily includes keynote speaking, which Jewell, whose name's on the business, he's the primary speaker. But then we also do a lot of training, whether that is workshop, breakout, half-day trainings, or our primary bread and butter are some longer training programs. And then we also do coaching, which is, I think you had Sarah Bonenkamp on a few weeks ago. So I know she talked about coaching. And so we also provide that in addition to some of our training services. And we've worked primarily in the agribusiness space with folks of all types of backgrounds from throughout the industry.
So is your client or the person that is buying your services, is it typically a company or is it generally just individuals that want training or want coaching?
Yeah, so the vast majority of the folks we work with were hired by their company. So unlike a lot of coaches, so if you look out kind of in the coaching and training space, especially on the coaching side, a lot of coaching is done at more of like an executive level. Mm-hmm. And so what's kind of cool about the programs that we run is we're training and coaching folks at all levels within the business. Mm-hmm. So what will happen most often is we'll either be brought in to lead a training plus coaching program specifically for a company, or they might send just 1, 2, 3 folks to one of our public regional events. And so it just kind of depends on the program and the company as to what they're looking for. We offer programs on both the sales and the leadership side of training. So that also kind of changes the dynamics depending on what they're looking for.
Okay, so you'd have programs designed specifically for like a sales skill set or specifically for like a leadership productivity, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, so a lot of our core curriculum is the same across all of our programs, and we can kind of talk a little bit more too about kind of our approach to training and coaching. So we have one sales program. And then we've got 2 different styles of leadership programs that we focus on. One is more for early career folks, which I know we're going to talk about later. And then we've got a leadership program designed more at those who manage people. So kind of middle management, but then also, department directors, C-suite, that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, yes. Speaking of mid-level management up to C-suite, you are Chief Operating Officer of Jewell Speaking and Training. So what exactly does that mean?
Yeah. So in my capacity as Chief Operating Officer, I like to tell people, or actually my boss, Mark, will tell people, like, I'm the chief of getting stuff done. And so for our company, which is small, there's just 4 of us, I really am the details and logistics person. So I handle everything from planning all of our training events, scheduling all of our coaching. I even, just because of the size of our company, I'm running the books on the back end. I work with Mark on hiring and staffing and some of our contract workers that work with us. I do client communication in terms of both logistics and billing. So I often tell people, if it's a detail, I probably do it. Now, if you're in a larger company, that might change a little bit, just depending on kind of the size of the company. But just because of the nature of what we do and how many of us there are, I have coworkers who are really good at kind of the big picture, strategic vision casting. And then I kind of help with, okay, how do we bring all of those visions and those ideas to life?
Okay. And how did you position yourself for that role? I think people coming out of college are thinking, well, maybe I could be a COO someday, but it's probably 30 years into my career. How did you get to this point in your career?
I will say, I was not planning to be in this role at this stage of my career, so it was never something that I planned out. Most people will probably tell you I'm a pretty driven person, but I have never been one to have like a 5-year plan. Yeah. So I did not foresee this by any stretch of the imagination. What I will say, though, that's kind of what's gotten me here is one, really understanding your strengths. So I know that what I'm really good at is details and efficiency and creating systems and keeping lots of balls up in the air. And that's a strength that in certain environments, it's really valuable because it's not something that everybody brings to the table, especially kind of in this entrepreneurial world, right before. So I came to Mark's team in June of 2016. Prior to that, he had hired a part-time assistant for himself, but otherwise, he was a one-man shop. And so it was really valuable to bring on somebody who could kind of handle all of that behind the scenes work. It's kind of funny, on our Facebook page today, we posted a question of, how do you manage your to-do list? And Mark replied 2 words, Amanda Sollman. And so that's kind of says a lot about the nature of our relationship. But so know your strengths, I think, is one thing. And so if you're somebody who likes detail, likes managing to-do lists, likes kind of keeping your eye on all of the moving pieces and making sure that they're all executed really well, maybe this is something you would like to do. I would also say that what brought me to this position is networking and relationships. So I met Mark when I was a sophomore in college. I was a state FFA officer in Michigan, and Mark was working for National FFA as a trainer for them. And so Mark was actually one of my National FFA trainers when I was a state FFA officer. And we just happened to become Facebook friends after that training, and we stayed in touch for the next 10 years, just tangentially, not really close or anything. Yeah. But then when he was building his business, I actually went to one of the very first trainings he did when he went out on his own and started his own business. So then we reconnected there. And when he was ready to bring somebody on, he gave me a call, and, I just happened to be ready for a change in my career path. And so I think that's the other thing, not necessarily specific to being chief operating officer, but just in general, I could have never forecasted that I would have been in this position, but those relationships, you never know when an opportunity is going to present itself.
Oh, yeah. I think that is so, so important, because as a recruiter, obviously people are reaching out to me when they want a job. So they're ready for something to happen right away. And what I always have to caution them on is it's very, very unusual for me to encounter somebody for the first time and within a couple of weeks, place them in a new position. Right. It's not transactional, it's relational. So what actually ends up happening is I get to know them, and eventually over time, I am able to identify an opportunity that's right for them, because I know them so well. So it happens over time. And usually, it's not uncommon for it to be months or years, down the road. So I think that's such a great example of that. Now, if I understand right, you came from a larger organization to, at the time, an organization of you and one other. So that had to been an adjustment of sorts. Tell us about that, because I think there's some people out there who probably are wondering if they're right for maybe a bigger organization or a smaller one.
Yeah. So prior to this role, I worked for a marketing agency in Minneapolis. And it's actually kind of funny because when I started there, so that was my first job out of college, they only had roughly 25 or 30 people. So they weren't huge. I mean, they're bigger than where I'm at now, but they weren't huge. And over the course of the 5 years I was with them, they grew from about 25 to about 100. So just a huge, and again, depending on where you go to work, 100 may be a big company or not so much, but that's a lot of growth in 5 years. And so there's a lot of different, there's pros and cons to both situations. That's for sure. In a smaller company, we have to be very nimble, and we are all kind of, I was telling you before we started recording, I'm a jack of all trades. Like if something needs to be done and I can do it, I jump on board and I do that. Whereas maybe in a larger company, you'll have a little more specialized roles. So maybe there's more people to do more jobs. So there's not quite that bouncing around. In a larger company, maybe you have, a few more resources. So whether that's, people resources, financial resources, facilities, or, some people get vehicles, so in a larger company, you might have more things like that. Whereas in a smaller company, maybe you're learning how to, kind of get as far as you can with a few less resources in some of those cases as you grow. So, pros and cons to both. I will say either way, it doesn't matter whether you're going for a big company or a large company. To me, culture is incredibly important. And when I took the first job right out of school, I was very fortunate to have several offers on the table. And to me, it ended up being a gut check. Who were the people that I wanted to spend every day with? Right. And at that time, I'd never been to Minneapolis until I interviewed for the job. So these were literally going to be my friends because I didn't know anybody out there. So I kind of, didn't matter necessarily the size of the company for me. Who were the people I was going to be spending each and every day with? And were they the type that I wanted to do that with? Same with my company now. I love the people I work with. We talk outside of work hours. We've got group chats. We've got Snapchat groups. These are really cool people. And so to me, that's the most important thing.
Cool. And I know that team is for the most part in Omaha, but you are in Michigan working from home. So tell us about working from home, working remotely. I know it's got its own joys and challenges. How's that been for you?
Yeah. So the funny thing is, even though, we're a team of 4, I'm in Michigan. We've got 1 in Minnesota, 2 in Nebraska, but they don't live in the same town in Nebraska. So all 4 of us work from home. We are fully remote, which is kind of cool because when I was with my last company, I lived out in Minneapolis for a few years, and then my husband was able to get a job back in Michigan. And so we moved back, and I actually worked for that company from home for a few years as well. So I'm going on now about 3 years working from home with 2 different companies. Yeah. So I personally love it. Again, kind of being that detail, efficiency minded person. I love the ability to just sit down and focus. And outside of when I might have calls or meetings, I really can just put my attention down, put my head down and get work done. Whereas when you're in an office, right? There will be people coming to talk to you, coffee break talk, and there are definitely good things about that. So I don't mean to discount that at all, but I think for me and just my work style, working from home has been a really good fit. That being said, I was just telling someone yesterday, the pros are also the cons. There are times where you're going to miss having people to interact with. There are days where I joke that I go to the grocery store just so that I can be around other human beings because I haven't left my house in a while. And so that's something I think you need to take into consideration is that when you work from home, be careful about being too homebound, and having something to leave for. Also, communication becomes incredibly important. And I think my team now is really good at this, whether it's text messages, we use Zoom for video conferencing. Like I said, Snapchat groups, Facebook messaging, actual email, phone calls. Like, we are in communication all the time. And I think that's been a really good benefit. It's also been a little bit different for me, having a fully remote team versus being one of the few remote people in a larger company. Because I think when the whole company is remote, it's easier for you to default to things like video chat. Whereas I think when you're one of the few remote people in a larger company, it's kind of always like, we got to bring Amanda in. Right. We have to.
You're the one on the outside. Yeah.
Right. Because they're all together all the time. Right. So like they just don't think about it. No bad or anything. It's just, you don't think about it as much. Where when you're fully remote, it's like, okay, if we're ever going to see each other, we have to default to video chat.
That's a good point.
So very rarely even do we talk on the phone. We're more likely to say, hey, can I just shoot you a Zoom link so we can talk really quick? And that's been cool because it also helps, again, if I haven't left the house in a while, at least I've got some sort of people interaction going on. So it depends on your personality. Like, if you know that you are not someone who is like kind of self-motivated to get things done, maybe working from home is not for you. But if you are someone who, I know I can manage my workload and get things done, might be something to consider.
Yeah. I'm with you. I love it. The only difference between you and me is I've got two little ones constantly running around. So I don't ever get that like break from humanity, but yeah, no, I personally love it too. And for me, because I'm not naturally as organized and detail oriented as you, it's taken a while for me to continuously tweak my system to become productive. But I love it. I wouldn't change it at all. And for those of you tuning in live, if you have a question, feel free to just leave one in the comments and I'll make sure we get that in front of Amanda before we let her off the hook here. But one thing I haven't asked about yet is the actual training and coaching part. Yeah. I know you're involved in that too. So tell us about that aspect and what you love about that.
Yeah. So when I said I was a jack of all trades, I literally meant it. So you got the one part of my job that's kind of the operations, logistics, behind the scenes work. But then you get what's in the forefront, what's in our name, the speaking and training side of the world. And so on the training side, I work with Mark Mark and the rest of our team, Wade and John, on several of our live events and facilitating those. So there's certain topics that we kind of all gravitate towards. So when I'm co-facilitating a workshop, there's a couple of different sessions within the workshop that are sort of mine. And then we just kind of team teach a lot of the other concepts. And then I also do coaching. And so depending on the group that I'm coaching, it's either one-on-one or small group. So it's usually, obviously one-on-one, pretty straightforward. Small groups are usually 2 to 3 clients plus me as the coach. And so the coaching side for us, we often say the purpose of coaching serves three purposes. So you've got providing feedback to the client of, how did that situation go? What could you have done better? Perspective, like let's look at this through a different set of eyes, and then accountability. So with a lot of professional development out there, you go to a day-long or a 2-day-long workshop, you kind of sit, you listen to somebody give a PowerPoint, and not that there aren't times for those, but what often happens in most corporate training is it's never adequately reinforced. Okay, so there's not folks following up with you saying, how are you applying these new concepts? How are you making sure, and so what ultimately happens is that investment that was made in you is you rarely get as big of a return on it as you could, because it's not followed up on, it's not made routine, it's not interwoven into your day-to-day work. And so then you go back to your job, you get back into your normal environment, and you just kind of default to what you know from before. Yeah. And so the really cool thing about coaching is not only do we teach you something in the live event, but then we're going to talk about it. And in our programs, most of our key programs start with a 2-day live training, and then they're followed up with 3 months of weekly coaching. So we're going to be with you for 12 weeks saying, okay, how are you going to apply this? What situations are you going through? How could we improve this? How could we optimize this? Like just asking you questions so that those concepts that you learn, you don't have a chance to forget them, because we're going to be there continuing to talk about them. And the goal is that you get longer term growth, longer term impact by having that coach there as backup support.
And is that like literally one-on-one like this, kind of like you and I are right now?
Yeah. So if I'm doing a one-on-one, it is exactly like this.
Wow.
But same thing, if we're doing small group coaching, it's on Zoom. And so it's the same. It would be exactly like this, except instead of just you, I'd have 3 people on the other side.
Yeah.
So.
Very cool. We do have a couple questions here from the audience. First one is from Andrew Cutter, and he's asking, do you have any trainings in Ohio or Michigan by chance?
Oh, we don't necessarily have anything on the schedule right now, but that is always up to change. So we do kind of 2 different things. One, we have our private events. So that's where a company contracts us specifically to come in and work with their team. And we'll go all over the place for that. I mean, if you want to bring us in, cool. But then we also do public regional events. And historically, we've kind of rotated those between Omaha, Minneapolis, and Columbus, Ohio. Right now, I do not have anything on the schedule in Ohio, but if you know people who want to be or who want to come, we can definitely, we're really flexible depending on where we've got people coming from. So that's the biggest thing is, if we've got a lot of folks in the Omaha area, then that's where they tend to go. But, if we have a group from other areas of the country, definitely we consider that.
Okay. And those regional events, is that like your Millennial Mastermind program?
That is. So that's our Millennial Mastermind, our Agribusiness Relationship Mastery Experience, which is, or ARMY, which is sales training. And then the Thriving Leader is more for like management level leadership training. I
was so proud of myself because I had the Millennial Mastermind caption queued up, and then you throw 3 at me. I wasn't ready for all 3, but because I know there's a lot of there's a lot of millennials in the group. Let's talk about the Millennial Mastermind.
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. So back when Mark first went out on his own, he was doing some speaking, some kind of half-day, one-day workshops on this topic of what he called thriving across generations. And basically what that was is trying to teach, kind of baby boomers, older Gen Xers, how do I work with these millennials, right? We all hear it all the time. These darn kids, us millennials, right? And, it was just like, they were just really struggling with how to kind of bridge some of those generational transitions that were happening in their companies. And so Mark kind of started talking about, there's this idea of really coaching these younger professionals, and that, young professionals really respond to, additional feedback and having that extra layer of support. And what he was getting is all of these kind of management level folks who are saying, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I'd love to be able to give them that added level of support. But the reality is I don't have the time for that. Right. Which is so true. I mean, in so many, it's hard to understand as an early career person, but the reality is, as you move up the chain, often you get more responsibility and no one takes anything away. Right. Yeah. And so we get to middle management and upper management, and they know that they should be good coaches and mentors in that role as managers, but often they're feeling really stretched for time. And so Mark kind of said, well, if they're feeling stretched for time, I can help with that. Yeah. Right? So we developed this program called Millennial Mastermind, which is designed specifically for early career professionals, and right now primarily in agribusiness. It could be outside of ag. We've had a few people here and there, but primarily our focus is within ag. So we typically say, people who are within their first 5 to 7 years on the job, roughly. And what the goal of this program is to help you get your career off on the right start. So many early career professionals really feel like, oh my gosh, I must be the only one who is failing, right? Or I must be the only one who's struggling with this thing, or I'm afraid to ask my boss for something. Or like, am I doing this right? Right? Like there's all of these inner voices that are kind of casting shades of doubt on their first few years in their career. And so this program is really designed to give you tools to build a mindset for success in your career. None of our programs, with the exception of our sales programs, are super technical, right? Most people think of professional development as like technical training. Like, oh, I'm either really bad at something or I don't know how to do something, so I go to training to learn that. Yeah. Our trainings really focus on the mindset, because the reality is, like, I can give you all the skills and technical knowledge in the world. If you're, let's say you're a salesperson, if you're too afraid to drive up a driveway, like, it doesn't matter if I've taught you all the scripts in the world, right? Or, if you have all the potential in the world, but you're afraid to ask your boss for clarification on a project, like, you're not going to reach success as easily as you could. So, like, how do we help you develop the mindset to be able to, get clear on what your goals are, and then really build that level of certainty in yourself that, hey, I have the knowledge, I have the skills, I have the experience to do this. That's really what the Millennial Mastermind is designed to do, is to help you lay that foundation.
Cool. Yeah, that mindset stuff makes a lot of sense. We got another question here. This is from Hannah Borg of Fast Ag News fame.
Ooh, Hannah, I follow you on Snapchat.
As someone who serves in a leadership role on a council full of other leaders promoting agriculture to youth, what is your best advice or resources to continue growing as leaders while still in college?
Ooh, all right. Best advice or resources to continue growing as leaders while still in college. Good deal. So, a couple of things right off the top of my head. Obviously, you're already doing this, but if you want to build your leadership skills, like, serve in leadership roles, right? So I guess that's one of the first things, is like, look for those opportunities to serve as an officer in a club, or when I was in college, I was really active with the National Agri-Marketing Association, and I love being able to stand up there and compete and speak, and so I think a lot of those skills have really carried over. Also, like, look for opportunities to get involved in professional level organizations while you're still in college. That was one of the things that was really cool about NAMA, is even though it was a collegiate organization, it connected me with so many professionals, because there's a professional side to it.
Yeah.
If you are involved in Farm Bureau, I know depending on what state and what school you go to, you might have a collegiate Farm Bureau that could interact with a professional level. Or if you don't have collegiate Farm Bureau, there's Young Farmers and Ranchers. So there's some opportunities to start networking with folks that way. The other thing read, watch, listen. So books, YouTube, and podcasts, like, I am in those constantly. But find what works for you, right? So there's different people have different interests within the leadership space. So, a lot of our team has a real interest in, like, personal development and, how do I grow myself as a whole person? Right. Other people have interest in leadership really specifically within the corporate space. So how do I manage people? How do I lead teams? And that's kind of a different aspect of it. Some people have interest in leadership from a, kind of being an industry leader or a thought leader. And that's yet an entirely different or related but different space. So yeah, I would say, like, kind of find out what area or areas are you interested in, and then really go learn about a lot of them. So I think there's a lot you can learn from people who have been there before, and there's so many good resources out there.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point of the kind of self-discovery, find out what you want, because I think that's the hardest thing when you're at that point in your career, is just figuring out, where do I fit in? What problem do I want to solve? But Amanda, this has been really helpful. And thank you to those of you who ask questions. That always really enriches the conversation. I really appreciate that. Where can someone go to learn more about the work you're doing and perhaps get involved as a participant in one of your programs?
Yeah. So our website is markjewelltraining.com. If you can see it on the screen there, that's Jewell with 2 L's. And then we are on all of the major social channels, Facebook, Mark Jewell Speaking and Training, Instagram and Twitter are both MJ_training. MJ training was already taken. And then myself and Mark are both on Snapchat if you want to find us there. So once the live video goes up, I can also, Tim, throw a bunch of those up in the comment section.
That'd be great. Yeah, if you could do that, that'd be fantastic. So I'm not typing away here.
Yeah, because there's a lot of them.
But actually, we only got to like half of the stuff I want to talk to you about. So we will have to have you back on another episode.
Right.
I think this is on multiple levels something really of interest and of benefit to all of the folks in the AgReg community. So thank you, Amanda, for being on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. What you're really telling me is I talk too much.
No, not at all. I would have cut you off if I thought we were in the weeds too far. No, thank you very much. And thanks for those of you who tuned in live. If you missed part of the broadcast, you can watch it here on Facebook, or like I said at the beginning, on YouTube, or it's now a podcast. So check that out and make sure you follow up with Amanda on her social channels. And we will be back next week. Thanks again to Amanda.
Sounds good.
Thank you for joining AgGrad Live. Visit aggrad.com, that's AGGRAD, to join the community, create your profile, and learn more about careers in the agriculture industry.